Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me again for the this month's online broadcast of Bliss is Our Nature. So I got a couple announcements that I'll give while I wait for everyone to arrive tonight. So thanks for all the emails I got. I would just want to thank everyone, and I'm really touched by just the countless emails that I get from everyone all around the world. I gotten so many this week, especially from Australia and Europe, all over Europe, different parts of Asia, and got one this evening from Guatemala, and of course, throughout the United States and Canada. So, thank you all for joining me. It's such a pleasure for me to be here. I'm supposed to remind everyone that this webcast is supported by donation. So, afterwards, it's helpful if you go to my website and just click on the PayPal link, and you're welcome to offer a donation there if you feel like you got something meaningful from this broadcast. So thank you for those, and I appreciate the ongoing support that I get from all those around the world. So let's just take a minute here to really just to fully arrive in our body, to let go of the day, let go of the week, let go of the busyness, and just arrive here, and just to simply notice, what is it like to be me, and not in some weird spiritual way where we're trying really hard to be me or to discover me, but just in the most natural sense. What is my presence like? What do I feel like? How do I experience myself? In the most natural sense. So if you can imagine back to perhaps a time when you were just a little kid. And for me, when I was a little kid, I used to run around in the cornfields. Sometimes I would just stick both arms out and just kind of hit all the the corn stalks, as I ran through them. I grew up in the Midwest. But there was just this great sense of freedom, this great wonder of being alive. It's just a sense of total peace. And also that I fully belonged here. Now, even if the farmer would come out and holler at me, I would smile and keep running and just feel as if I fully belong here. So let's see if we can just take a moment and really get in touch with this feeling of fully belonging here. And so if there's any question about how to do this, it's descending out of your mind into your heart and just feeling the goodness of your heart, the innocence of your heart, feeling that quiet presence looking out of your eyes right now, being that quiet presence which simply hears my words. And whether you've met me or not, I want you to imagine that we're old friends. That the sound of my voice is just like sitting with an old friend who completely loves you, completely accepts you, no matter what you've done throughout your life. And just begin to notice, what does it feel like to be me? What does this presence of you feel like? And I don't want you to think about, what you feel or how you should feel. And also, I don't want you to check in with your emotional world, because your emotions come and go, but there's something more fundamental to our nature than our emotional mind. Now, most people, when they really try to get in touch with themselves, they look at their emotional world and they say, oh, I'm happy, so therefore what I am is good. Or, oh, I'm really sad. I'm really hurting. I'm really struggling. And so therefore, what I am is a struggle, is an ongoing problem, is an ongoing pain. And the truth is, we are neither of those. We're not the happy feelings and we're not the sad feelings. Those feelings, do they not arise and fall within this quiet presence which you are? To really get in touch with what we are, we have to be willing to get in touch with the very thing which has been here our entire lives, every moment of our life. There's been this quiet presence here. And as you begin to feel into this presence, oftentimes the presence is referred to in the yogic world, it's referred to as Sat Chidananda. And they say that our whole existence is made up of Sat Chidananda. Sat being truth, Chit being intelligence, and Ananda being bliss. And so I'm specifically going to focus on our blissful nature. But everyone's presence is made up of these three qualities. There's this quiet truth about us. The truth that we do exist, that we are here, that what we are is beyond the movement of mind. Mind is just random thoughts that are moving through us, random conditioning that is moving through us. In a sense, our mind is very much like a radio player of the past. Sometimes I drive down the road and they'll play a horrible song from the 60s or from from an 80s rock band, and I'll say, my God, aren't they ready to put this one on the shelf and leave it on the shelf and not pick it up again? There's some songs that we've heard literally hundreds, perhaps even thousands of times. Songs that, in a sense, they don't ever need to be played again. And our mind is very much like a radio player that's just playing songs from our past, thoughts from our past, memories from our past. The other day I came home from work and I walked in the door and I noticed out of my mouth came something that my father used to say. I kind of grunted and grumbled like him. My wife looked at me. She's like, why do you do that? And I stopped in that moment. I said, why do I do that? And I immediately felt the oldness of the thought, the habitual nature of the thought. I noticed that this thought, it wasn't even my thought. It was my father's thought. And it had been passed down from him to me in a very unconscious way. It's not that it was a good thought or a bad thought. It was just kind of a thought of a grumpy old man. But it came with some it came with some behaviors, like some body language. It came with a mood. It came with an emotion, not a real heavy emotion, but just kind of like a disgruntled guy when he comes home from the office. And keep in mind, I work with some pretty heavy things throughout my day. But this wasn't one of those. This was simply a habit that had been passed down to me from my father. And who knows how he got it. Perhaps it was passed down to him. And that it didn't even belong to him. And perhaps we can trace it back to a disgruntled dinosaur far off in history, far off in the past. I know who, someone chased him down. Maybe he had a hard day at work being a dinosaur. And so, back to what I was saying is that, my wife pointed this out to me. And I just notice, oh yes, this isn't me. This thought, this mood, moods are something we take so personally. This mood is not me. It's something that was given to me, just a movement of a habit. If we look at, even emotions that we think are ours, are they really ours? Does anger actually belong to us? Does it belong to us, or was it something given to us? Our reaction of sadness, does it actually belong to us, or was that too given to us? I've lived without emotions before. I've had days where there's been no emotion, and I was absolutely present. I've had days when I've seen emotion come into my consciousness, and I've looked at that emotion and said, oh, I don't want to do that. I, I, I just don't want to be angry right now. I don't want to. And so when we live in a place of freedom, a place of sat, which means truth. Truth is freedom. You can see what's true about me. This quiet innocence is what's true about me. This emotion, it's a passing thing. It's a passing thing. And so the chi is the intelligence. The intelligence to choose. Oh, I don't want to be that passing emotion. I don't want to be that habitual nature. And when we make wise choices like this, what we find is that we are left with the third quality of our essential nature, which is ananda, bliss. Bliss is our nature. If you walk home from work and you open your door and you see your dog there, chances are he's going to be wagging his tail. When I walk into the door, my dog, he just starts jumping on me. And all he wants to do is just love me up. He's not sitting home depressed. He's not sad about this or sad about that. He's not worried about what Donald Trump is going to do next, or, what the state of the world will be if Bernie Sanders gets elected president. He's not thinking about any of these things. He simply hangs out at home all day and rests in his nature of bliss. And so it's easy for him to be happy. It's easy for him to be loving. It's easy for him just to run up and just start licking me all over, because bliss is just pouring out of him. The same is true actually with all of us if we weren't so identified with our mind. And I'll even go as far as say this: because bliss is actually the fabric of our nature, this bliss is always here. It's always radiant. It's the very radiance which makes us alive. Yet most of us miss it because we're busy arguing in our mind. I saw this funny thing on the internet before I turned on the live stream this evening, before I joined you. There's a little article, and it was in, somewhere on Facebook or something, and it said that there was a snowboarder and a skier. And I know this is a very big story here. A snowboarder and a skier, I think they were up in Aspen, Colorado, and they were riding a lift together. And there's always been this old silly kind of rivalry one-upmanship and, weird division between snowboarders and skiers. And so the snowboarder, he got on the lift and, he started, running his mouth, telling some jokes about skiers. And, the ski lift was going up the mountain. And I think the snowboarder, he was just kind of just gently harassing or making fun of the skier. And at some point, the skier grabbed him by the back of his jacket and started shaking him and said, "Do you think this is funny?" And he started shaking the kid. And then he just pushed him off the lift. And the kid fell, about, 20 or 25 feet. And luckily, we've had a lot of snow in the last couple of weeks. So he landed in the snow. And I think, he said he was unhurt and he just kind of rode away down the mountain. But it's a funny thing, these little things we argue about. Now, I remember it's been a while since I've been on a ski lift, maybe a couple of years. But one of the things that I love to do when I'm on the ski lift is just to sit there in total silence and feel the magic, feel the wonder of floating through the air. Just floating through the air, floating through the trees. In a sense, it's a funny thing because you're floating up a mountain. And normally there's big, beautiful mountains all around you. And there's this wonderful sense of openness, of unity. And I will say absolute bliss. It may not be real exciting, dynamic bliss, but just this gentle, radiant bliss. I think most of us know this experience. It's the reason why most of us walk out in nature, go on hikes, go camping, because we put our world behind us. But if you ever stand before a tree, just feel into the presence of the tree. You'll feel a sense of peace, a sense of total acceptance, and just this gentle, radiant aliveness. This gentle, radiant aliveness, in which I'm speaking of, this is our nature. So to get in touch with it, all that is required is that we turn our attention inward. Inward toward, or onto, into our radiance, into our bliss, into the very feeling of being alive. Can we turn our attention directly onto that? In the Buddhist world, this is called turning awareness upon itself. What most of us do when we go inward, we put awareness on our thoughts. We put awareness on the story, which is spinning in our mind. But to discover the bliss that you are, we have to be willing to look at the direct experience of aliveness, the direct experience of our fundamental nature. And so sometimes when we go to yoga, if we give ourselves permission to be very quiet, to drop into our body, and the thing about our body is it's radically different than our mind. Our mind just tends to be spinning this and that. It just is lost in some world or some movie or some play, some fantasy. Sometimes I laugh at the fantasies that come through my mind. I say, oh wow, this is this is pretty silly. It can be fun to even have these kind of fantasies. But what I'm speaking about is noticing the space in which the fantasy is arising. What is that space like? How big is it? How free is it? How quiet is it? How absolutely innocent is it? And so, the big question tonight is can we give ourselves permission just to naturally be ourselves? To give up our fight, give up our argument with life, and just be ourselves. Can we take the masks off that we wear? I was meeting with someone earlier today, and she said, well, sometimes I put on the mask of being the sophisticated business lady. I said, well, how does that feel? She said, well, it feels kind of phony. I said, I know. I've tried that mask before. It does feel kind of phony. Sometimes we put on the mask of the tough guy or the tough girl. Sometimes we put on the mask of, I need you to save me, the damsel in distress. Sometimes we put on the mask of the prostitute, or the one who is always trying to seduce someone, or the salesman, or this or that. But the invitation here is, can we drop all masks? Can we drop all of our defenses and just be us? Can we be who we were born to be? My God, can you give yourselves permission, please? Your heart is calling out for you just to be you. Now, your ego, on the other hand, it says, well, I have to be this person so that I can close this deal, so I can get this relationship. Sometimes I think, I need to be a different kind of father for my teenage daughter to love me. It doesn't work. It comes off as phony or annoying because it's out of truth. And so instead of being what we are not, can we simply be what we are? Can we give ourselves permission to be these happy, beautiful, divine beings, which we all absolutely are? Can we let go of our defenses? Can we forgive ourselves? Can we stop believing in guilt or shame? Can we stop selling our souls to be something that we're not? And just open-heartedly be what we are. And when you finally give yourself permission just to really be what you are, a funny thing happens. As your heart starts speaking to you, it begins to say, hey, I've always had this dream to be an artist, to be a teacher, to be a yogi. And so to support this blissful nature that we are, to have it wake up and continue in our lives in a practical, embodied, integrated fashion, we must be willing to listen to the true voice of our heart. So if the voice says, I want to be an architect, we say, okay, I'm going to walk in that direction. If it says, I want to dance, then we begin dancing. If it says, I want to climb mountains, then we begin climbing mountains. If it says, I just want to sit here quietly and just be, because my whole life I've been doing and trying to impress and trying to achieve and trying to do this and that, then we say, okay, we're just going to sit here. After my initial awakening, My heart told me, just sit on this couch. And I literally sat on the couch. I had a couch in my backyard and stared at this willow tree blowing in the wind. And it felt as if I spent a couple years on that couch. Now, of course, there was times when I went to work and I got up and fed my children and took care of them. But I spent as much time as life would allow, just relaxing, just laying there, falling in love with the absolute beauty of the world, watching the seasons change, watching the trees grow, watching the sun go across the sky, watching the moon rise, hearing dogs bark in the distance, all the while feeling the hugeness of my divine nature, feeling the hugeness of the divine nature of this world. It was such a fortunate time, such a beautiful time. And then at some point, my heart said, okay, now it's time to share. It's time to share this love. It's time to share this gift. It's time to share this peace. And so life is continually inviting us. Can we listen to this deeper aspect of ourselves and give ourselves permission for this love, this bliss, this truth, this great intelligence to come forward within ourselves? This is my invitation to you. This is life's invitation to all of us. So, a couple topics that I'd like to transition into, and all of it will generally relate to knowing and discovering bliss as our nature. Because when we live in alignment with truth, when we live in alignment with wisdom, we feel blissful. We feel good. In fact, our body, our very nervous system, it naturally feels good all the time until we step out of alignment and until we step out of truth. And I'll give an example of that. Say you're just walking down the street. You're enjoying the spaciousness of the sky. Perhaps you see some of your neighbors walk by and you smile at them. And you're just resting and relaxing in your innate goodness, in your innate, blissful, open-hearted nature. And a car drives by and it plays a song. And it's perhaps it's a sad, sappy romantic song like many songs are. Someone's singing about a broken heart. And then right away, you begin to think of, that old girlfriend or boyfriend you had who broke your heart. Right away, your body will begin to feel tense. Your heart will begin to ache. And what's happened is you've stepped out of truth. You've stepped out of the present moment. You fabricated something in your mind and you began to believe a thought that I am not okay without their love. Or I need them, I miss them, I wish my life was different. Whatever it is, as soon as you have a thought like that, your nervous system, your energetic nervous system, it contracts. You begin to feel pain. And that's your body speaking to you, your nervous system speaking to you, very clearly telling you you are out of alignment with truth. If I drive home from here and I turn on the news and I listen to Donald Trump and I start arguing in my mind with Donald Trump, I will feel pain in my body. My consciousness will go from being vast and open and free to feeling very contracted. That inner lawyer in my mind will come forward, and I will be arguing with something which is unreal. By unreal, I mean it's not present. It's not truly present. It's just a fantasy that's going on in my mind. And so when I step into that fantasy, my nervous system, it'll go from feeling open, spacious, and blissful. It'll go to feeling limited, tight, and tense. And so as soon as we step out of truth, as soon as we believe a thought that's not true, and I'll say this, that's pretty much 90% of the thoughts we have in our head are just simply not true. Now, they may be relatively true to some degree or another, but that's not the truth I'm speaking about. The truth I'm speaking about is right now you're seated in a room and there's a sense of spaciousness in the room. That's the truth. That's what's here right now. A sense of quiet presence is here right now. And so can we get in touch with that? Can we step into this truth? Can we step into the quiet radiance, which is looking out of your eyes right now, and be that quiet radiance? That's the truth. Okay, so I'm looking at my list of topics. So one of the things that I've been asked to speak about, and I received so many different emails and had so many questions this week from different individuals. One of the things I'm asked a lot about is spiritual relationships. So I thought I might just spend a couple minutes speaking about spiritual relationships. And the good thing to know here is that nothing in this world, no one in this world, is outside of the realm of the spiritual. And said differently, everything is spiritual. So oftentimes I get, a lady that comes into my office and she says, well, I'm really looking for a spiritual partner. Or she may say, I'm trying to make this a spiritual relationship, but all my husband wants to do is watch football. And he doesn't care about this or that. Or a guy will come into my office and say, well, I've been going to the yoga class. I've really been looking for a spiritual kind of girlfriend. And I always smile because everyone, if you really get to know people, you'll discover that all of us are on the spiritual path. Whether we are conscious of it or not, that's a different thing. And so the first thing to remember about spiritual relationships is everything is spiritual. Your husband's sitting on the couch watching the football game. That's an opportunity for you to join him on the spiritual path. That's an opportunity for you to have perhaps a much needed conversation with him about the two of you growing together. Maybe not in that moment. Perhaps you can allow him to watch the game. Perhaps you can sit down with him in a place of intimacy. Perhaps you can curl up in his arms and simply love him and be with him fully. And enjoy this quiet moment with him. And so the first rule about spiritual relationships is to know that nothing is outside of the realm of spiritual. Nothing. So we don't have to create this dividing line between us and all of life and say, well, I'm spiritual and they're not, and so I'm not going to be loving towards them or compassionate towards them, or I'm not going to share the beauty of my heart with them. And that's ridiculous. That's called arrogance. And so one of the things that I can say to support this idea of having a spiritual relationship, the first thing I can recommend, and it will sound silly because we're talking about relationship, is for you to take care of yourself first and foremost. And by this I mean have a daily meditation practice, a daily yoga practice. Go on quiet walks, read spiritual books, listen to talks like the one you're listening to now. Do things which nourish your soul, and avoid that which doesn't nourish your soul. For example, if you use any toxins, if you have a diet which is full of foods which aren't good for you, if you're drinking alcohol or smoking marijuana or doing drugs or smoking cigarettes or whatever it is that people do, all these different things, they cloud our perception. They cloud our heart. And so I invite you to nourish your heart, nourish your beauty. Take good care and be gentle with your emotions. Take good care and be gentle with your mind. And by that I mean don't overwork, don't stress yourself out, don't waste your time being lost in this drama or that drama. If you want to show up and really love someone and have them love you in return, we have to know how to be present in our life. We have to be awake. We have to be conscious. And if we eat a bunch of food that's not nourishing our body will be sick and it'll be hurting. We'll spend all this time complaining and being grumpy. If we're drinking alcohol, we won't be seeing clearly. If we're smoking lots of pot, we may have, strange euphoric sensations. But ultimately, it clouds our perspective. And so you must decide, how much of these toxins am I going to engage in? And you don't have to take it in any kind of judgmental way that, Craig said these are bad and I need to think that I'm bad if I have a beer every now and then, or something silly like that. We don't want to be judgmental like that, and that's not the truth either. The truth is, if you pollute your mind, it's going to be difficult for you to live in a conscious and awake way. It's going to be difficult for you to show up with a loving heart. And so the first thing about spiritual relationships is take care of yourself first. Know what true spirituality is about. Get to know yourself. Spend time in silence. Go on retreats. And while you are in relationship, make sure you are very clear about where you end and the other person begins. Get to know your shadow, your shortcomings, your inner struggles. And work with these inner struggles in a healthy way, in an adult and loving way. One of the reasons most people become so confused in relationships is because when two people get together, we have two highly neurotic, wounded people getting together in relationship. Maybe they fall in love, and as you get closer together, you rub up against each other's wounds, and then we start fighting and banging heads, and it gets very confusing after that. Sometimes I meet with couples in my office, and It's amazing to me how messy things can get, how distorted and lost we can get, because we don't know clearly that what we are is vast spaciousness and incredible bliss. If we knew that, and when we know we're vast spaciousness, if our partner, is being neurotic, we let them be neurotic. Because there's room within the spaciousness of what we are for them to be sad or confused or silly. But because we're in touch with our heart, we meet them with love. We meet their neurosis with love. What most of us do instead, though, is we meet their neurosis with our neurosis. And it gets pretty crazy after that. And the other interesting thing is if we truly know ourselves, if we know ourselves as bliss, and we walk in the door and our partner says, I think you need to lose a couple pounds, or I don't like the way you talk to me, or, I'm having a really hard time with you and you piss me off. You feel completely secure in your nature because you know that what you are is absolutely divine, absolutely good. And so it doesn't move you into anger, into resentment, into being hurt. We can respond from a place of love. Oh, sweetie, I'm sorry. I didn't meet you the way you wanted me to meet you. How can I help you? Why don't you sit down here and let me rub your shoulders? Or, oh yes, you're right. I'm happy to work on that. And we can respond from our heart instead of responding from a defensiveness. And so the first most important thing about spiritual relationships is that we take care of ourselves. We get to know ourselves. We live from the truth that we are. And if we ever find ourselves overwhelmed by someone else's neurosis, we take care of ourselves. We choose, okay, I realize I'm going crazy in my head. I'm realizing I'm feeling a lot of anger in my body. And so I say, sweetie, I love you, but I need to go on a walk right now. I'll be back in an hour or two. We go on a walk. We come back into our true nature. We nourish ourselves. And from a place of peace, we begin to look at what they told us. See if there's any truth in it. And then we come back and respond to them when we're ready from a place of love. Beautiful. So the first thing about spiritual relationships is to take care of yourself. And the second thing, and I say this to a lot of couples, is can you simply be willing to listen to your partner, to listen to their needs. I wrote this down. I said, listen first and judge never. Judge never. Now, couldn't that simple teaching right there change our world? If we listen to those who are angry at us, we listen to those who wanted more affection from us, we listen to those who were hurting and never judged them. I find so many couples, they have this thing within them where they just want to fight, they want to argue, they have this deep need to be right. If you have two people trying to be right in relationship, you're going to have two unhappy people and no real relationship. If you want to live in love and remain in love, you give up the desire to ever want to be right, the need to want to be right. And you simply let the other person be right. I mean, my God, the majority of the time it makes no difference. Let them have their way. Let them have their cake. Let them have their movie. Let them have. I've seen people argue about dishes, about milk. He drank all the milk. Hey, it's going to be okay. We don't have to drag our husband across the parking lot because he drank all the milk, because you didn't like the way he looked at you. Can we let the other person be right? Couples fight about directions, about who makes more money, about who does this or who does that. And so the invitation here is, can we simply listen to our partner? Listening is a great act of love. Judging someone else is a great act of violence. So much would change in our world if we stopped judging and simply listened with an open heart. Okay. And so I wrote a lot of things about spiritual relationships, but I think I'm going to save that for another webcast altogether. Because I could talk about that probably for the whole day. One of the things that's on my list of things is a lot of times I get these emails from people. They're saying, Craig, when you look out at the world, we see so much suffering. We see animals suffering and people abusing animals in countless kinds of ways, whether it's at a slaughterhouse or people abusing dogs, or one that I saw today on the internet was people still use these steel traps to catch animals, and how crazy that is. So this topic of how shall we respond? How should we respond to environmental devastation? How should we respond to all the craziness and the wars and the pain in this world? It's a simple answer, but it doesn't mean it's an easy answer. We respond with compassionate action. But compassion arises in one who's willing to be conscious, who's willing to engage, who's willing to see, who's willing to look into the eyes of someone suffering. Compassionate action arises in one who's willing to go visit their local animal shelter and look into the eyes of the animals there and say, oh, look at you, little buddy. Let me take you on a walk outside. Let me spend some of my day just not riding up and down ski lifts and fulfilling my own egoic desires, but perhaps taking a dog on a walk. Perhaps it means spending time with a loved one, or a grandmother or grandpa who's struggling with cancer. And it's difficult to walk into an environment like that when someone's really struggling. I used to do work at nursing homes. It was difficult to walk in there because there's people moaning, people in great deals of pain, people who feel lost, people with dementia and who are completely lost in their mind. And just to be willing to sit down, just hold someone's hand. Hold their hand perhaps in their final days or final months of life. And just love them. And so for compassionate action to be true, it has to come from our heart. And so for some of us, when we see, the pictures of the animal in our inbox of our email, and it says, "Will you sign this petition?" We sign the petition. For some of us, it means we stand in the streets and we protest. For some of us, it means we change our diet. So our diet is a more humane diet. It doesn't support factory farming, doesn't support animal abuse, it doesn't support adding to more pain and suffering in the world. And one of the beautiful things I love about many of the great spiritual traditions, especially the yogic and the Buddhist traditions, is there's all kinds of teachings about this thing called ahimsa. Gandhi taught about it. It means non-violence. So we live in a way which is in alignment with our heart, in alignment with peace, in alignment with non-harming. And so for some of us, that means we don't eat animals. We choose a vegetarian or vegan diet. For others, it means we're conscientious of the resources we buy in this world, the resources we use. We don't overconsume. We don't build the giant house if we don't need one. We use less paper. We buy less. And we support things which are good in the world, which replenish in the world. And so this is very much an individual question. A question of our heart is, how shall I respond? Can I respond from a place of love, from the highest place within me? Now, most of us, we just respond from this habitual place. And when I was a child, I used to eat meat. It was just a habit. But at some point, I looked at meat and I said, "Oh, that's not for me." It was a moment of awakening. It was a moment of clarity. It was a moment of truth when I saw that I don't need to follow this habit. It was quite a revolutionary thing when I was young. I went to a high school of perhaps 2,000 people, and there was probably 2 or 3 vegetarians there. And I think it's becoming more of a common thing. We have to listen to our heart for what is the truth. What's true for us? How shall I respond to the homeless man in the street? How shall I respond to my dog who wants my attention? Can I put down my newspaper and get down on my knees? Just roll around on the floor with him, throw him the ball, love him up. Or can I put my egoic needs aside and listen to something deeper? Okay. I have a couple more things that I'd like to talk about. I'm just looking at the time now, so I'm trying to choose wisely here. One of the questions that I get a lot is how do I integrate my spiritual life into daily life? And it all comes down to what I was speaking about a couple minutes ago, is can we listen to our heart? Not our mind, but our heart. And can we allow our heart to live through us? For some of us, that may mean going to the beach and simply going surfing. If we've wanted to surf our entire life, but we are always too busy, too lost, too confused, too hurting. But our heart said, I want to go out and ride those waves. And we ride the waves. If our heart says, I want to paint, we paint. If we want to dance, we dance. It's listening to the truth and allowing the truth to live through us as us, and to not be confused by our mind or our emotions. Now, I will say this, and I got this question a bunch, is how do I work with these difficult, painful emotions? If an emotion comes forward again and again and again and again within us, how do I work with that? The bottom line is, with any emotion, sadness, grief, anger, jealousy, rage, we listen to it. We give ourselves permission to feel it. We actively choose not to be afraid of these feelings, but to embrace them with love. Can we breathe into the emotion? Can we breathe into the sadness, the grief? Can we give ourselves permission to cry if we need to cry? Sometimes I tell people it's okay to throw your arms in the air and yell at God. God is big enough to take it. It's okay to unload that emotion, to let it go out of you. And sometimes we need to scream and shout. Sometimes we need to speak to our partner and say, hey, I really need to get this off our chest. Now, but whether they hear us or not, the important thing for you to do is for you to hear you, for you to hear your struggle, for you to hear your pain, for you to fully acknowledge it and be willing to courageously and open-heartedly feel your emotion and let it go. And let it go. And letting go it is us surrendering it back to God, back to life, saying, I cannot carry this burden any longer. I'm letting it go. Letting it go. So thank you all for all those great questions. I did have an email that I got here from my friend Lisa in Guatemala. And she brought up a very interesting topic, and it's something I'd like to spend a couple minutes talking about. And it all ties together. And basically what she's saying is that everything is a reflection of ourself. And so she wrote to me and she said, thank you, Craig, for your immense presence and your loving kindness and clear vision. Well, thank you, Lisa, for seeing me. Thank you for seeing me. Whatever it is that you see in me, you also have that same within yourself. That same innocent heart, that same loving presence, that same clarity. And I know this personally, Lisa, because I've seen it in you. And so thank you for saying that. So she writes, I've decided to face whatever it is that comes in the here and now and meet it with loving compassion towards myself and others. I'm finding that deeper and deeper that there are no others, that everything is an expression of oneness. Through this, she came to a point of surrender, of completely surrendering. And she feels overwhelmed by vulnerability and tenderness. I don't know what else to call it. My whole body vibrates, and in the last week I've had strange symptoms. I don't want to label it. And so this is something interesting, because when we step into our true nature, we become quite open, quite vulnerable. But what I would like you to notice here, Lisa, and for anyone else who this is resonating with, when we truly open, we begin to feel at one with everything, as if there's no separation between us and all of life. We feel the energies of everyone around us. We feel the energies of the earth. Sometimes I'm driving down the road and I just feel the energies of people struggling in Syria or in Afghanistan. And so to be open in this way, it takes someone who's courageous and not afraid to feel. And like you said, it seems as if strange symptoms have come forward within you. It's normal what you're feeling. The more you step into oneness, the more you will not understand. And by that, I mean you will feel everything. Whereas before, there was this sense of, I feel what's within me. I know what my emotions are. But when you step into oneness, there's going to be all kinds of feelings, all kinds of different things that happen within your body, within your nervous system. And it takes a while for your nervous system, in a sense, to upgrade itself, to be willing to deal with and handle all these different sensations. And so while that upgrade is happening with your nervous system, you're going to have different strange sensations. You may feel different kind of neurological feelings within your body, different sensations, different chakra centers will be opening and closing and opening more and releasing and letting go of layers of pain. And you'll connect into the collective consciousness and the collective unconsciousness. And so what's important here is that you stay very clear. You stay sane. And I like to be, in a sense, think about being very grounded in a Zen-like way. And just have a sense that the only thing that's true is what's here right now. And you said it. You've already answered your own question, as you decide to face it in the here and now. You don't face it in a fantasy. You don't face it in the past. You don't face it with some ongoing argument in your mind. You just meet it in the clarity of this present moment from the truth of your heart. The truth of your heart. And so I encourage you just to stay in this space. And just notice, where do you become unclear? Where do you get lost in this thing or that thing? And just be very gentle with your body, because it's going to take a while for your nervous system to completely get on board, to completely get upgraded. It takes the time period. I work with a lot of people all over the world who are going through a similar transition, and it is confusing. It absolutely is confusing. As the different chakra centers open and close and open and open and open, and different layers are shed. It's a confusing experience. So just feel your feet on the ground and just notice what's here right now and stay with that. Okay. So you had a question here at the end of your email. You said, you were saying, I know there's nothing to fix, but in meditation, sometimes you find yourself sleeping. And then sometimes at night, you don't sleep when you're supposed to. Everything seems to be turned upside down. And this is absolutely the case. That when our nervous system is going through this upgrade, sometimes you won't sleep at night. There's a lot of nights when I don't sleep. There's a lot of nights I lay in bed and buzz with energy, with light, with radiance. The helpful thing I found is just to relax into it and not argue with it. Just don't argue with it. Just let it do its thing. Things will straighten itself out one day. Maybe not today, but one day soon. As far as you find yourself sleeping in meditation is sometimes when our nervous system is waking up, and then we go, and so when our nervous system is waking up, we naturally feel peaceful, we feel vibrant, we feel alive, we feel radiant. These are the things that people try to get to through the process of meditation. And so a funny thing happens is, if you are awake, in the deepest spiritual sense, if you are awake, and then you go and try to do a spiritual practice, sometimes we fall asleep Because what we've done in that moment is we are trying to do something from the perspective of our spiritual ego. And when we are awake and then we try to do something from ego, it feels as if we're falling asleep. We'll feel sleepy, we'll feel tired, we'll feel exhausted. So instead of trying to meditate, if you can just sit and just notice, meditation is happening. Bliss is happening. Peace is already happening right here, right now. And so I wouldn't encourage you to give up a meditation practice, because I think a meditation practice is a good thing whether we are awake or not awake. I mean that, of course, spiritually awake. It's a good thing because it keeps us honest. It keeps us honest. And so I'm a big fan of having a spiritual practice, a daily commitment to the truth, the time that we set aside each day to sitting with the truth, to being in the truth, and to giving ourselves permission just to feel the truth without any interruption from work, from family, from whatever life's demands are. But when you sit, can you just sit and just be yourself? And so if it's helpful to do a walking meditation, do a walking meditation. You will not fall asleep in a walking meditation. But while you're doing a walking meditation, let it be a natural thing. You're just walking through nature. Perhaps you're walking by the ocean. Perhaps you're just walking through the city and just loving the experience of the buildings, of the sky, the direct experience of the moistness of the air, or feeling the rain falling on your body. You can sit with your eyes open and just notice the radiance of the room, the quiet of the room, noticing how big awareness is. And try just to play with that and meditate that way and see if that's helpful for you. And of course, if you have any questions, or if anyone else has any questions, you're welcome to email them to me. I can discuss them in next month's broadcast. Or you're also welcome to set up a Skype session with me, and we can really go into deep investigation with whatever it is that you're struggling with. Whatever it is that's coming forth in your spiritual path. So while I'm here, in a sense, you're welcome to use me. And with my teachers, I used them greatly. By that, I mean I called them, I got in touch with them, I emailed them. With my teacher here in Colorado, I would drive to his house all the time and discuss my problems with him, and also my insights, bounce ideas off him. I'd spend hours and hours deeply investigating these things. That's the job of the spiritual teacher, is to be available to the student, available to life. But of course, for a teacher to be able to do this, a student is invited to respond with generosity, whether it's payment or service or this or that or whatever it is. We give back. And so this relationship, it becomes a sustainable relationship. My God, I gave about 20 years of my life to my teacher. And he gave, all of his life to me. It's such a beautiful relationship. We don't have such good models of it here in the States. But to me, it was just what's in my heart. And so, I have a hard time responding to every email that I get, but I do my best to read them and respond to them. But what's what's better is if you meet with me individually, develop an ongoing relationship. And of course, if you don't resonate with me, then you find another teacher who you resonate with and who you can meet with individually. Because when we meet with someone individually, we can really grow. We can make great strides. And we can see through illusions quite quickly. If we try to do it all on our own, it may take us a long time. We may spend lifetimes just spinning our wheels, just lost in our own chaos and confusion. And so it's good to have a spiritual teacher, spiritual friends. It's good to be part of a sangha or a community. It's good to find some support in this crazy world. If we get true, deep support, we find out that this world is actually not crazy. That it's an evolutionary world, which is absolutely divine. By evolutionary, I mean it's a world of growth. It's a path. This whole world is a path. So I'll leave you with that invitation. If you want to meet with me, send me an email. We can get together. If you have a question, you can email me. I'll do my best to respond. Although I am flooded with emails each day, but I'll do my best. In the meantime, I encourage you just to spend some time in silence, getting to know this wonderful, vibrant, blissful nature which you are. And so these last couple minutes, I invite you just to close your eyes, just to drop into your heart, just to feel the goodness and the radiance of your heart. Feel that quiet tenderness, which has been here in every moment of your life. You feel that quiet radiance, that quiet tenderness. And give yourself permission simply to fall back into that radiance. Allow that radiance to breathe through you. You can take some full, deep belly breaths. Perhaps feeling the same radiance of your heart in your belly. Giving yourself permission to settle in a little bit deeper, a little bit more fully. Perhaps you can feel a strength and solidity deep in your gut, deep in your belly. And so can you allow these two forces to come forward within you? The radiance of your heart, just noticing it coming alive throughout your hands, your arms, your shoulders. Your throat and the space you call your mind. Throughout your back, your belly, your torso, your pelvis. And just breathing deeply and fully relaxing into yourself. Allowing yourself to fully feel and experience this energetic transmission. You're feeling this brilliance, this radiance, quiet peacefulness. Which is your true nature. You're letting go more and more fully into it. How lovely it is. This presence which you are, this grace which you are. How divine it is. This glory which you are. And so, my friends, I invite you just to rest with this as long as you like. To know that you can always call upon this radiance, this beauty, this divinity which you are. You can always experience yourself and know yourself as this. Simply through unhooking from your mind, unhooking from that egoic silliness. Just dropping into this divine beauty which you are. And so I encourage you to continue to sit. It may sound silly, but to bask in your own glory, in your own radiance, in your own divinity. To give yourself permission to fully fall into this. Without any worry of time, without any thought if I have to do this or do that. Just to simply let go more and more into this. And so until next time, it's been my absolute pleasure to sit with you this evening. May God bless you all. May you enjoy the hugeness of your own divinity. And with great love, I bid you good night or good day, whatever time of day it is, wherever you find yourself.